Hello and welcome to another episode of the Daily Remedy Podcast. Today we're here with patient advocate Dora and chronic pain patient Jessica, who has an amazing story to tell for everyone to hear. And with that, I'd like to welcome both Jessica and
Thank
Dora.
you. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for telling our story on your platform.
Thank you very much.
Not a problem. Jessica, let's go ahead and start with you because I think it's very important that people know the story from the very beginning to where you are now. I know it's a lot to kind of throw out there, but try your best to kind of take us piece by piece and what has happened to you.
I'll try to keep it concise. I was injured at work. I fell and had a bunch of wood slam into my spine. In 2003, I didn't want to go on workman's comp because I knew a couple people that had dealt with workman's comp and knew it was a nightmare, but I had to. They had no choice. Because I was a single mother and was recently divorced, I couldn't not work and wait for comp to decide to send a check. It took almost 2 years for me to get my first check. The only reason I didn't end up homeless was because my parents were financially able to help me out. But I kept working. And so when I tried to finally decided I need a lawyer to get this moving along, I had to call 16 of them before one would take me because I didn't have a lot of back hours due to me. So there wasn't a big chunk of change to come their way in the beginning. Anyway, I get on workman's comp. In 2010, they changed all the laws across the board. Each comp laws are different by each state, but there's like a base of rules that everybody has the same, and those were changed across the board. And I lost continuity of care during this time. It started in 2006. Was the first medication I had taken away because it was I was on Actique, 600 micrograms 4 times a day, along with other pain meds. But that one wasn't. It was only for cancer pain, so I wasn't allowed to have it. Then they left me alone until around 2010. They took some more away. And then 2012, 2014. And then I got, I think, till 2016 or 2018. And that's when, 2014 or 2016, they took me down again. And then 2018, they took me down to 90 MME. I had to go to court a couple times to fight it.
Why
This
90?
last,
Why 90?
because of the CDC's, you know, not limits. They say they're not limits, but that's how everybody,
Right, right.
took
That's
it,
how it's in being
interpret it as.
misapplied. Right.
Yeah. And so it wasn't my doctor that was taking me off my pain medication. It was workman's comp, the insurance company trying to do that. And she wrote letters for me to the insurance company. She made phone calls and she asked me, will you come in my office while I do this? I want you to hear what I'm saying, and I said, I know she did this stuff. She gave me copies of the letters. She, was on the phone. Have you not looked at her file? Do you not see her imaging? She needs these medications to function, She's not going to die. She's not addicted,
Right.
No, doesn't matter. So anyways, when I was taken down to 90 MME, and in between, before all this, I had weaned myself off on my own 2 times prior to this. When they came out with that hyperalgesia stuff, I thought, well, maybe, And back then, there wasn't a differentiation between being dependent and addiction either. Not even in the DSM, they didn't differentiate between that. And so, I kind of allowed myself to believe that I was addicted when I really wasn't. I was dependent. So I thought, I need to get off these meds. That was horrific, going through the withdrawal without that, without kratom. I didn't know about kratom then. So anyways, they took me down to 90 MME. I was bedbound for almost 2 years. I lost a bunch of weight because I couldn't cook. The only time I got out of bed was use the bathroom. It's not like I was sleeping. I was just in so much pain. I just lay there. And I have videos from me like that a couple times. I didn't want to put a bunch of crying, videos out, but people need to see that sometimes. That's how people are being affected. And so I had to wait to fight. I had asked previously, like around 2010 and 2012, about settling my workman's comp case. And my lawyer said, "What are you, crazy?" She goes, "You are so injured and have so much health needs, that's you don't want to do that because you're going to need health care the rest of your life." And my family was, wanting me to do it, and I was sick of dealing with it because they were inserting themselves in my care. They were harming me. I wasn't able to get the care that I needed. And so
Jessica, let's pause right there, Jessica. I think that's important for people to understand what your workman's comp was effectively putting you through. They were pitting your pain as leverage for their legal case in a way where they would only provide coverage in a workman's comp manner if you reduce the amount of pain medications you were taking. So they were able to essentially parlay your pain against you in the court of law. Talk a little bit about what tactics they used.
there weren't really any tactics. I just said, this is the way it is. You can't be on 90 MME or you can't be on this amount of pain medication, and we're going to take it away. And
May I ask what you were,
one of the things they do
what
is
MME,
that
what MME were you on before they started tapering you?
nobody used MME back then,
Oh,
so
do you
I'm
have
assuming I could tell you what I was on.
if you could give, do you have any
The
idea?
highest dose I was ever on was I was on the 600 micrograms of Actique. Fentanyl suckers is what they are. And actually, that was a bit much for me. So what I did, I went in and asked them to lower it to 400.
Okay.
I was on that. I was on 30 milligrams of OxyContin before the reformulations, 3 times a day. I was on number 10 Lortab 6 times a day. I was on 350 milligrams of Soma compound 3 times a day, and ibuprofen 800 3 times a day.
Okay.
And then they started with the Actique. They took that way, and then they started lowering. Oh, and I was also on a low dose of Xanax and Ritalin. Well, that came in later after they removed some. I had a psychiatrist. I loved him. I rarely say that about psychiatrists. He was a really good guy. And he was an expert in long-term workman's comp cases. He really was very helpful. But one of the things workman's comp did when they changed the laws was I was doing physical therapy. I was going to aqua therapy. I loved aqua therapy. I was doing that 3 times a week. I was doing myofascial release massage. That helped my fibromyalgia pain quite a bit.
Great.
And I was that was 3 times a week, 2 to 3 times a week. I was going to the chiropractor 2 to 3 times a week. And I was later on, I started doing acupuncture 2 to 3 times a week. So you were only allowed to have so many visits per treatment per year or per month, how many months. And so I would get the prescription from my PCP. They would send it to the PT place. And when it ran out, all I would do was call my doctor, say, "Hey, my prescription ran out. I need a new script." "All right, no problem. I'll fax it over, And I just continued on with my care. Well, after 2010, they made it so the PT people had to show improvement. That's another thing they did. If you don't show improvement while you're going to these things, like they call it MMI, you're supposed to reach MMI, maximum medical improvement. And if they don't show that you're actually getting at all better at all, then that's another reason for comp to take it away. They don't believe in maintenance, apparently. So I would have to call my PCP and say my prescription ran out. They would send it. My doctor would then have to call. I believe this is how it was. Would then have to call Workman's Comp and say, "Hey, I need authorization." They would have to send paperwork in to get another authorization, which they didn't have to do this before. They would have to wait for Comp to get back to them. Then while they're waiting, Comp would contact my PT and say, "Well, we want the records. Has there been any improvement before we authorize this?" So then PT had to get back to Comp, and then Comp would get back to my doctor, and then my doctor would have to write the new script and then send it back to Comp, and then they would actually authorize it, and then it would be sent to the PT place. So what we used to take a couple days now took up to 2 months, and they cut the number of visits down. So whereas I was having 2 to 3 times a week visits previously, now I'm lucky to get, I'll get 2 to 3 for a month, and that's it. Before I was going like 6 months at a time. And now it takes, so I'm getting like 4 visits, and then it takes almost 2 months to get a new script. All that progress that you made and all that benefit they received from doing these exercises is lost while you're sitting there waiting for this stuff to go through. So that was just one of the many things.
Did the workman's comp reduce physical therapy, acupuncture, other options as your legal case was proceeding?
No, in fact, when this kept happening and I'm in tears and I can't get care, my lawyer finally said, "You're the first person I've told this in all my years of doing this, that the only way you're going to get care is if you settle, anybody with your type of injuries, you're the only person I've ever told this. The only way you're going to get care is if you settle your comp case and pay for it yourself." She goes, "I don't know what to tell you. It's only going to get worse, And apparently she was pretty involved on the workman's comp, other than just her legal practice, so I said, "All right, let's do it." Well, then they made me wait because I mistakenly, I thought by that point I was only going to my one doctor appointment. I was done. I'd had it. I'm done dealing with all this. Just let me have the little bit of meds I get and just let me die in peace, So, I go and say, "Okay, I'm ready to settle my case." "Oh, well, now we have to wait 2 years because you're over the amount that we're allowed to give you." They have a cap on the settlement money you can get. I was on workman's comp for 17 and a half years. My spine is destroyed. I had one total hip replacement. I need another from over-prescribed steroid use. There's no way I can work, And among the other surgeries, after my initial injuries, I ended up having 15 major surgeries between 2007 and 2013. And so I'm like, what more can I do to lower the cost that my life is costing you people? I go to the doctor one day a week or once a month, So they just had to, I guess, let it. I don't remember exactly what they did, but I just sit there and wait for another 2 years, and they cut. That's when they went after me for the 90 MME, and so we got that done. And then at the end of that 2 years, believe that's probably when I was like in bed and everything. The only reason I settled my comp case was so I could get pain meds, so I could have somewhat of a life again. They sit there and ask you at the hearing, "Are you settling this under duress?" Well, what do you think? I can't say yes because they're not going to give me my settlement,
Right.
So I got the settlement finally in 2020, March of 2020. And during that time, we discussed with my family. I had family living down here in Florida. I was in New York for all this. And now I'm in Florida. So I moved down here with my dad, who was basically my caretaker. My younger son had moved out of the home by that point. My older son was there, but he was working all the time, and of course you feel guilty, your kids shouldn't have to take care of you, they're young people, they got lives to live and things to do, I was extremely active, my entire life until this happened to me, and I just never sat still, and now that's all I do is sit all day. Well, I can't even sit upright for very long. I sit in a special 0G chair that I bought that's $4,500. But that's the only way I've made it this long. If it wasn't for that chair, I wouldn't even be here now. I
And
know that with all
you're
soul.
living off of their settlement, right? Because you
Yeah,
can't
and that's the
because
only way
you
I could afford it.
because
The
you
only way I
can't
could
work.
get that chair was because of the settlement.
Right.
Um, Comp used to pay for stuff like that. They paid for me to get a $3,600 special mattress back in like 2005 or 6ish, but after 2010 they weren't covering stuff like that. Um, yeah, it's just ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
just
Insurance has become
yeah. Now my settlement money's running out. It was supposed to last me 20 years. Um, I got barely over 225 grand for 17 and a half years, and 3/4 of that went into this MSA account. either Medicaid set aside account, medical set aside account, Medicare set aside account, one of those three. Um, and because I'm also on disability, all that brought on a whole nother, all these catch 22s everywhere you turned around. Some doctors would accept me with comp, but wouldn't accept me with disability. Others were the opposite. They accept me with disability, but not with comp. Um, insurance would cover this, but it wouldn't cover that. It's just a constant fighting for everything.
Let's talk about your pain because I think it's important for the people to understand that throughout this entire ordeal, really like a decade-long ordeal, there were
20
times
years.
you, when your pain was better controlled and when your pain was not well controlled. How was your pain used against you in the health system? Whether it's the workman's comp, whether it's through disability, how in your mind was your pain used against you?
Um, just I don't. Maybe I haven't put enough thought into this aspect of it. I don't. I mean, other than not being able to get my pain meds, that's how it was used against me. And then I wasn't able to do physical therapy appointments or any other appointments because I couldn't get to them. It's just more that we don't have support for people like this. Like, I could have had an OT or a PT come to my home if they would have paid for that. That could have worked slowly up to me, with the pain meds, I gotta say. When I had a decent amount of pain meds where I was shopping, I was going to PT, I was going to both land-based and aquatherapy, I was going to the chiropractor, I was
You,
going to acupuncture, I was going to the myofascial release massage, I was shopping, I
you
was
were
cooking,
you were
I
art. You
was
were
doing,
an artist. You were an artist.
yeah, I couldn't do the stuff I used to do, the big
Yeah.
pieces, but I could do smaller pieces, which I wanted to be an artist since I was like 3 years old. That's my whole life. Everything I've done has been to be creative, and I've sold my artwork for years and years and years. It's another thing that happened when I got injured. I had my full-time job, and then I had my side business, an art class studio on the side. And when I got injured by comp in New York State, you're not allowed to live on a property that has a business on it. Because originally I thought, well, I could put it in my kid's name. I could hire somebody to do the heavy lifting for me, and I could continue to do work. And, so maybe the loss of income wouldn't be so bad. I could still support myself somewhat. Nope. Nope. I was forced. I just gotten my business all legalized and on the books in 2004, and they forced me to close it. I had to shut everything down. Couldn't put it in a family member's name because it was on the property we lived on. That broke my heart. um, yeah. So that's another thing they did. Here I was, ready, able, and willing to work within my doctor restrictions, and they wouldn't allow me to do it. Who's going to hire you when your restrictions are, self-imposed breaks whenever needed, no lifting, no standing, no twisting, or no turning, no standing for more than 15 minutes? I wouldn't have hired me. I get it. I mean, what kind of, but when you're self-employed, you can work around those things, and that was just idiocy to me. But yeah, I mean, it's just more like we have the best, like technically, I guess, healthcare system in the world, but it's the most expensive, and people are going broke and turning homeless and losing their homes because they can't get the care that would be available if it wasn't so outrageously priced. If it wasn't for my family, I would have been homeless by now, no doubt. Absolutely, 100%. Because another thing was my lawyer kept telling me that because I was on workman's comp, this is another thing. When you're on workman's comp and disability, and this is all states this is in, you are capped at the benefits you're allowed to get. No matter how many hours and how many years you worked, you are only allowed, now it's probably more now, but at the time you were only allowed $1,244. They increase it by $20 every year or something like
Oh
that.
wow.
Um,
Okay, let's take that number. I think that's an important number to point on. So let's take that number and let's apply it to your health.
yeah.
How little is that, and how quickly does that run out given your healthcare needs and what you need to do to maintain your quality of life?
Well, I think it was 140 or 170 grand in my MSA account when I moved here 2.5 years ago, and it's almost gone. my wheelchair that I had to get because it can go in the zero G position. I went to a protest in Washington a couple years ago. I knew it was the last time I was ever going to do anything like that, but that's the only way I could do it. The wheelchair was over 22 grand. A lot of times insurance doesn't cover this stuff. My van, $80,000 for the modification so that I can. My dad died. We moved here in September of 2020. He passed away in January 2021. So now I'm alone, trying to take care of myself. There was nothing. It was very sudden, basically. And I'm super independent, which I kind of hurt myself. If I hadn't been so independent and had used a wheelchair earlier and stuff like that, I probably would have been a little farther along. Not a lot at this point because of other stuff that happened, but kick myself for not wanting to do that. But yeah, so that right there took 3/4 of my MSA just for the wheelchair and the van so that I could be independent. And thank God I asked about it because when you go to insure it, a lot of insurance companies don't cover those modifications. So if I ever got in an accident, thankfully my insurance does, but many people don't. My insurance agent told me a story about that. She's like, "Oh, I'm so glad you said that because she had someone that happened, 70 grand worth of modifications in his vehicle. He gets in a car accident 3 weeks later and sure, it's not going to pay for it, Now he's back
I think
to,
that's very difficult. It's very difficult for people to understand just how tight of a budget you're really
Right.
working on.
yeah,
People always assume callously, oh, you receive settlement money, oh,
mm-hmm,
you're on disability,
yeah,
oh, you're on workman's
Right.
comp. But
yeah.
what they don't realize is
Oh,
that you have these unknown expenses. You don't know how expensive it is to live
Right.
when
right.
you're given that settlement money.
And once you get that settlement money, you have to pay for all of your health care. That your insurance cannot pay for any of that. It has to be your MSA account that pays for it. And you're not allowed to apply for Medicaid, in my case, because I'm on Medicare. You're not allowed to apply for Medicaid until every cent of that is gone. Then they want to come in and double check all your receipts and make sure you spend it how you were supposed to spend it. So who knows how long that'll take. You know, I I've tried. I know a lot of people. They hear me, just pieces and stuff from where I talk. I've done videos and on TikTok, and I'm pretty open about it on Twitter, which But and I've had other advocates reach out. Well, let me try and help. Let's try this. Try this. I've tried for 2 years of my palliative care down here. I know what the definition is. Many doctors don't know what the definition is for their own state. You know, can't find it. I've tried everything. I looked into Section 8 housing. When I started to look into it, they had a 6-year wait list here. And now, when you call, they aren't even taking applications anymore in Florida for at least several months ago, last time I checked, I mean, what are these people doing? If I didn't have that settlement money, I'd be homeless. And that's what's going to happen. My settlement money is going to run out in a couple months. My family's no longer, they can't fully support me and pay for everything. I get like $800 a month from disability. That was supposed to increase because when you settle your workman's comp account, they have that offset because you're on both comp and disability, and that was supposed to go up. Well, lo and behold, mistakes were made, and it didn't increase at all. It was $740 for the longest time, and for a while I had to pay $130 or $100 some dollars out of that for insurance. It's it's ridiculous. I don't know. That's why you hear about people eating cat food and all these. I can't imagine, and honestly, that's why people are going to the street and using street drugs. I'll be honest. At this point, if I was capable of going out and looking for this stuff and had the money, that's another thing. They're always saying how cheap street drugs are. They're not when you have insurance covering your medications. It's like. But I can't even do that. I can't even go sit at a bar and meet people or whatever. I mean, it's like, and it's so dangerous. It's very unhealthy. It's dangerous. Especially with drugs like that, a lot of times they're not, it's not just weed or something, it's
Right.
like, and with the illicit and fentanyl and stuff, and you don't know what they're cut. It's so dangerous. I don't know. I feel like I say I would go out and try it, but I don't know if I, but sometimes, it's like, oh, I get why people do. I do. I completely understand, and I would never judge anybody for that. I get it. Especially people like you read these stories day after day after day. They have children they're trying to take care of. People that have lost their meds that they lost their job because they couldn't go to work. Then they lose their
Right.
car. They lose
Lose a
their home.
house.
You know, it's heartbreaking,
It's
and something needs to be done.
Let's do this because first off, Jessica, thank you so much for sharing as much as you have, as openly as you have. You're very brave for what you're
yes.
doing. So I want you to know that first and
Thanks.
foremost. I want for people who may not be able to understand to get a better sense of this balance where when the medications are not properly covering your pain, just how much of your life is lost, both economically and
Hmm.
just you as an individual. Talk a little bit about these balances you have to make where you have to almost compromise who you are as a person
Oh,
just to get by. As painful as
absolutely.
that may sound,
No, I many people do. They just, my pre-injury life or my pre-diagnosis life, my old life compared to my new, I have a different. It's a whole new life now, and when I am properly medicated, I can not only do more than heat something up in the microwave. I could show you my stovetop that's full of stuff. I don't use my stovetop. I can't use the drawer, the actual oven, because I haven't figured out how to get it in and out with my wheelchair, bending over that hot bar and stuff. I got an air fryer gifted to me, and that's been really helpful.
Yeah.
I also have a hernia, a large hernia that causes, gastric issues. So I eat a lot of soup but I have to have my groceries delivered. I pay a fee. I think it's $50 or $100 a year, and then they get delivered for free instead of paying $10 for each delivery. But there's a $35 limit they have to spend every time you get. So like if I just run out of milk or something, it's very painful for me to get out and go out in the van and get in my van and then drive around, try to find a handicapped parking spot, and get in just to get a gallon of milk. I'll sit there in my chair and I'll be hungry, but instead of eating because I know how much it's going to hurt, especially if it's really worse than normal day, I'll just sit there and smoke cigarettes or drink water or eat candy, instead. And I just keep my candy and snacks right. Which I eat very unhealthily. Um,
Well, you said you quit smoking, and this stress of all this has
oh, I
pushed you
had
back.
almost quit smoking. I'd been
Yeah.
working on it. I was down to like 3 cigarettes a day when they started hitting me again around 2014. Yeah, so I know that's when they hit me again. And hit me with a big I think it was like 20% of my meds I took away at that point, 15 or 20%. And it really knocked me for a loop. So then, I was awake constantly and in so much pain that I couldn't move around. I was still able to sit up for a while, and I could sit in my chair, and I was active on um, social media and stuff, but I couldn't sleep, and I was just constantly. I just started chain smoking. I smoked like 2 or 3 packs a day. That costs a ton of money. Um, I would
it's
be
it's very
outside doing
interesting.
things. I would be able to go out. I can't go out to dinner with my family anymore. When I first moved down here, I was only using one cane. Then it progressed to 2 canes, and now I'm in a wheelchair. Um, yeah, it's not good.
What was your
What else?
question, Dr. Joshi? What was your question?
Well, uh, I wanted to kind of get you to characterize these changes to your medications. You call them a hit, and I thought that was very interesting because early you had mentioned you're not addicted, you had some level of awareness on the dependency, which is commendable given how complicated your medical conditions are, and you self-tapered as you felt necessary, yet you were still given these hits, told you have to wean down your medications. What, go through that experience with us. What did it do to you mentally?
Oh,
What did it do to you physically? And how did that affect your stress
and
levels?
not only me, my whole family. My whole family had to deal with that. My kids were younger at the time. They're 28 and 30 now, 27 and 30. And they were teenagers when a lot of this was going. Well, they were 7 and 10 when I first got injured. And when this was going on, when I started, I tried to self taper. I did self taper myself. I was off all opiates at one time. I was off all opiates and benzos, everything for over 2 months, and my blood pressure was still so sky high. I tried to go to PT, and my therapist was like, "I'm not going to treat you. Your blood pressure is too high. I don't feel safe. You need to go to the ER. You need to call your pain doctor." Well, my pain doctor at the time kept saying, "Well, it's been over 2 weeks." I'm like kind of insinuated that I was still using the medication, and I wasn't. I was going up to 5 days without sleep, or like maybe 15 minutes here, if maybe a total out of 5 days, get an hour or two tops. I was just a zombie. I was curled up on the floor in the bathroom in puddles of your own bodily fluids. I lost 20 to 25 pounds in the first 2 weeks because just constant issues with your gastric system, diarrhea, I'll just say it, I guess. You can't eat
You can't
anything,
sleep.
and
Yeah.
water would go straight through me. And this was 2 months of this. 2 months. You
Wow.
know, I heard about this thing called PAWS, post-acute withdrawal syndrome, and I guess some people don't believe in it. Well, I believe in it. I did not. And finally, I thought, and then I also thought, I was this drug addict and I was addicted and what a loser I was, and I was a failure because I couldn't, get better and what was going on, because I finally broke down and took a half of one of my Lortabs to see if that's what it was, because I was calling a halfway houses or whatever you call them, rehab places, for drug rehab places, to ask them, do they have any experience with this? Because my PM wasn't helping me out any. I asked my PCP, and you had to be really careful back then too.
Right.
Because any hint of addiction whatsoever, and you could have everything taken away. And there was
Right.
no mat back then. They just tied you down to a bed and let you puke and sweat your guts out until it was gone. And which is why I didn't want to do this professionally and did it on my own. And sorry, I got lost there for a minute. Yeah, so I took a half a Lortab, and I felt, 20 minutes later, I felt normal. I was like, this has to be it. This is it. It repeatedly, 2 weeks, it'll be out of your system. Well, my at least my experience wasn't like that, and my personal belief is the longer you're on it, probably the longer it takes to get out of your system altogether. Plus, or during that, I of course had tried everything under the sun, gabapentin, Neurontin, Keppra, Cymbalta, Seroquel. I think those played a part in some of that shakiness too. I never used them for a prolonged period of time. So Keppra I did. I had the least amount of side effects with that.
Gabapentin.
But yeah, it was horrific. It was
Mm.
horrific. It was awful. My kids were scared. They're worried about me. Is mom going to be okay? It was awful. And I just felt like a failure when I had to go back on my meds because of course, I was in a lot of pain, but my pain then, it's not like it is now either. But when you're still going through all that pain that doesn't allow you to live your life like not even like I used to, but you can't even go out for a walk in the woods. I was a huge outdoors person. It was like people shouldn't have to live like that when there's something available to help them.
Right. There's treatment available. It's
Right.
cruel. It's very cruel.
It is cruel. It's torture. It's torture. It's the only word for it. We're
Right.
being openly tortured. Openly tortured. People know this is happening. I mean, I'm a little more hopeful lately for people because it seems like there's more stories going out, about the other side and people like me going through this. And, thankfully it took forever to get that done, but it's still going to be a long time. Still, in my opinion, anyways, it's going to be a long time before the
A lot,
pendulum swings back
a
to
lot
at
of
least,
bureaucracy, and
yeah.
you know,
Well, and the whole,
What's your day-to-day
public
life like?
side of it and the stigma. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. What is your day-to-day life like now?
Huh.
So, what is a typical day for you, and how does that go?
I don't sleep in a bed anymore. I can't get in and out of a bed. I sleep in my chair. I don't know when I'll be awake or when I'll be asleep. Well, I just found a new combination of NyQuil, melatonin, and ibuprofen that knocks me out pretty good so I can get hours of sleep. But for years, I was lucky if I got 4 hours of sleep in a row. That was amazing. That was unusual and rare. Yeah, I just sit in my chair, and only time I get out of my chair is when I have to go to the bathroom. I hobble, lean from my chair, lean onto my wheelchair, get into my wheelchair, drive my wheelchair the 20 feet to the bathroom. My wheelchair won't fit into the bathroom. So then I have to use my two canes and hobble my butt. It's extremely painful to get to the toilet. I have a raised toilet seat, get in there and use that, and then come back out and get back in my chair. Because I had the settlement money, I've been able to order, food through like DoorDash or Uber Eats. I do that, and then I get the groceries delivered. No, I'll make soup and he'll reheat soup in the microwave. I used to like to cook. I was a decent cook. You know, I used to make 12 different kinds of cookies and 3 different kinds of candy at Christmas every year.
Jessica, you said that you can't sleep more than. Was there a time that you slept better?
Um,
When was it that
Me
you actually?
personally, I've always not needed a lot of sleep. Not never needed like 8 hours. But
Right.
when I got my 6 hours, it was restful. This is not restful sleep.
So
If you dare to move, or I have little bolsters on both sides of my hips, so my
so if your pain was
hips don't
managed,
move.
you'd sleep better,
Oh
or
yeah,
no?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. When my pain is managed, yeah, I do
Yeah.
sleep better. When it's not, and hasn't been
Right.
for years. I've been
Okay.
fighting back and forth with it since really hard since 2010, 2012 was the first like big chunk.
Dora, that's a great question. That's a great question, Dora. I want to expand on that a little bit because I think it's interesting to see how, as a pain patient and as somebody working with pain advocacy groups and an advocate in your own right, Jessica, you get what empowerment means and what the lack of empowerment does for your day to day life. If your pain was better controlled, would your cost of living go down? Would you be more productive in society?
Oh yeah.
I don't want to be unfair in kind of equating A to B, but I want to get a sense of kind of what that lack of empowerment means to you and how aware you are of that.
I have $800 kiln that I hasn't even been used once. I have a whole hot glass studio sitting out in my garage that I haven't been able to use because the big hope was when I changed my PM from New York to Florida, this guy agreed to continue with the care plan that I had with my doctor in New York, was to continue to titrate me up to a functional dose for me. And I was hoping to, they have a lot of outdoor things here. I was going to start making small glass projects and, bring some extra support in. I know I could bring in, starting out, you have to build, your business word of mouth, but starting out, I could easily bring in a couple $100s a month. And once I got my name out there, I could easily, who knows what it would be from there. I had my last invoice before this, my very last invoice I did when this all happened, and I had to close it out, was for $24,000. I was making decent money. I mean, it wasn't every day or every week I'd
Right.
get that, but that lasts a while, and it was not, and couldn't do that anymore. I would be a lot more active, doing a lot more things, I feel I'd be a lot more productive, and especially knowing what I know now, I would be on this. I've sent letters to every single senator and congressman that was, you know, in the seat at that time when I did that. I've tweeted at people. I've sent emails. I've made phone calls. I've done everything you're supposed to do. I just, with everything else going on, I just didn't have the ability to stay on it like you have to. I mean, you have to have the stamina to be able to do this stuff, which is part of why it's taken so long for our community to get going, because we're all a bunch of hurt, sore, people, sick and looking to try and get care. And
Well, Dora, let's talk about how you and Jessica met and how together you guys are providing the advocacy and the support that is so necessary for many patients in Jessica's situation.
Well, I met Jessica through Facebook, and I she had live streamed a rally. I believe this was back in 2019. Was it a DPPR rally that you did, that you attended?
2018 or 2019,
Yeah,
yeah, it might have been
something like that.
2019 January,
And
I think it was.
and she live streamed it from her car, and she had her signs, and she was just really, I mean, I thought, wow, this woman, I found it very impressive that, I mean, she went out there, and I knew she was in a really bad shape. She's much worse now, with your medication being so drastically tapered. But I just found her to be just a really nice person, and we fostered a friendship, over the years, and I've watched her somewhat deteriorate, not be as active socially. Every when I do get a chance to, we send each other really loving and long DMs, you know, and we pretty much rant and then rant over, and then how are you? Hope you're well, and we can't we stay in touch, and uh, uh, you know she shocked me when she told me her plan, and it's been on my mind, and I think she's such an asset to the community, and I can't believe she's just to a point where the government has pushed her in a corner, and she's just trying to do the best with what she has, and we'll discuss further about her plan, and that's just where I'm at now. I'm I just want to. This is at the state of pain care. I mean, I've seen and met thousands of pain patients, acute pain, chronic pain, and I I and I don't think that I've met someone that has this plan in place. So it just struck me as like, wow, that's the state of pain care we are in this country, where we're abandoned, and we're forced to suffer, or make other choices. And from there, Jessica, if you could tell us about what it is that you plan to do because of your situation.
Yeah, I decided on rational suicide. Um, there's a lot of people say, "Aren't you scared? Aren't you afraid?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm afraid, but I'm more afraid of what I know than what I don't know at this point." Um, I originally was going to go to Switzerland, spend a ton of money doing it, but the reason I wanted to do that was so I could be open about it, and I want people, that's the only reason I'm being open about this. I'm not looking for attention. Doesn't make me feel good to talk about this, or, but I hope that by being open about it, that it will help raise awareness, Um, and I had everything. I'd paid my deposit to Switzerland. I was trying to get the tickets, but I wasn't going to buy the tickets until I had confirmation of travel from the airport to the clinic, and they just couldn't help me with it. And I tried several different sites. I went to Reddit, Switzerland thing, trying to find things, and I couldn't find a way to do it. And then there was a very small window because my boys and my sister was going to go with me, that she was able to do that because between this, her job situation changed and she couldn't get the time off that she used to get. And so I finally just had to say, forget it. This group that I found, I had known about them previously, and before I got my settlement money, I thought, well, if I ever choose to do this, I'll work with this group, and had actually contacted them. And another thing was, the reason I wanted to do it in Switzerland was because I didn't want to die alone, really, and I don't want my doctor to get in trouble. I don't want anybody to say I OD'd and had died. My death was opioid related, because it absolutely, well, it'll be related, but it'll be related because I'm not getting enough, not to, due to
Right.
having too much.
Well, because
Um,
the toxicology report would show that you had opioids in your system, and it's automatically
well,
presumed that that's how you died.
right, right.
And so you don't want to put your doctor in that situation, or
Well,
anybody in that
I'm going to
situation.
leave everything, all the equipment on, so when my body is discovered, there won't be there shouldn't be any question of what happened, and I'm going to leave something writing, saying I did not OD, and So I don't, because if my doctor gets in trouble, not only does that ruin his life, but all his patients, they all
Right.
get hurt. You
Right.
know, I don't want to hurt anybody by doing this. So, anyways, I got back in contact with this group, and they're doing it for free, by the way. It was going to cost like 25 grand to go to
Wow.
Switzerland.
Wow.
Yeah. I was going to have to get money. If I had any money left, it was going to be pennies, when this was done and over with. And you can't leave that, the settlement money that you get, that's supposed to be yours. If you don't use it all, they get it back. You can't gift it to your children. You can't let your kids inherit it or give it away to your family. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And that's why I said,
Wow.
well, screw it. I'm using the money for this then. This is definitely workman's comp related in my opinion.
Right.
Um, so, I mean, what are they going to do? I'd be dead. um, yeah, so,
It's amazing how for you to feel a sense of empowerment or self control, a sense of control in your life, this is the path you feel gives you that. And I'm just wondering, like, the DEA, your state's attorney general office, like, uh, why are they not trying to help you?
I don't know, because it costs money. I mean, at this point,
There's no
maybe if I'd
incentive.
gotten the care and the help, yeah, maybe if I'd gotten the care and the help I needed 10 years ago, I'd be in a place now where I could continue. But, I'm a walking poster child for a stroke or heart attack, and I don't want that to happen. I'm worried everybody that I've ever had worked with care that I had a decent relationship with, I speak to about these things, always warned me about going into long-term care unless you have money to pay for the decent care. I've been in short-term care facilities after numerous surgeries, and that was not a good experience for the most part. They're all overworked and understaffed and begging for the bedpan or begging to be taken to the bathroom and hearing people crying for the same reason. It's just awful, awful. Not a good experience. And I don't yeah, you hit that nail on the head when you said about having control. It gives me a feeling of control because when you're like this, when you're this, at least in my experience, when being this disabled and having to basically beg for pain relief, but you can't really actually beg because then you're a drug seeker. This dance that you have to do, and it's like you lose all control of your life. Or feels like it. I feel like I have zero control over my life for the most part. Now I seem to have a little bit, I feel like I have a little bit more, but for a long time it was all up to what the doctors were willing to do, what the insurance company would pay for, what I could physically handle to deal with. And yeah, I feel like I lost my autonomy, and it's just, yeah, it's like, all right, at least I have some control over this, and I can say my goodbyes ahead of time and, say what I want to say afterwards, leave that behind. And I don't know. I feel okay about it. I'm not, I mean, yes, I'm miserable and I'm depressed, obviously, but it's not like I'm living in the land of despair either. I've been there before, and that's not what this is right now. It's just, I'm so tired of being in this much pain. I can't. I've caught myself the last few days, when I have to go to the bathroom and hiking my butt those 7 steps, and it's so painful. And it's like, oh yeah, you know what? I'm not going to have to deal with this anymore soon. And it makes me feel better. You know, it's just, I can't, it's so hard to describe because unless you've been in pain like this, you just don't understand. I also have a unique perspective in that my ex-husband, we were already divorced, but he was in a severe motorcycle accident, had to have an amputation. And I saw him go through what he went through. In order to keep him in the hospital, they admitted him to the drug rehabilitation floor because he didn't have insurance. And their whole thing was nobody can have medication. We had to have a special meeting with the entire staff of the floor to allow him to get 3 Lortab a day. After he had 3, he had 1 amputation, then another 2 more surgeries to amputate more. I have never in my life seen anybody in this much pain. He was out of his mind. He doesn't even remember almost 2 weeks. I've never seen anybody in that much pain in my life. Oh, it was heartbreaking. And forgot where I was going with that, but
What was the
oh,
reasoning?
I remember. afterwards, hey, I'd be like, well, just get in your wheelchair, try to get out. It will make you feel better. And this was not no mean intent, at all. But it was like, well, I know he's depressed. He wouldn't be after going through this. He'd feel better if he did this. He wouldn't hurt so much if he did that. Well, guess what? I called him up later and apologized to him because I know what it's like now, and it's not just depression. And you won't. There are times when you're in so much pain. Putting yourself in more pain is not going to make to go out so that it looks like you're doing something for yourself. Is not helpful. You know, I understand.
So Jessica, I'm sorry to cut you off
No, I'm
because
sorry.
this is just it's so powerful what you're saying. Uh, as an advocate, working with Dora and just your own advocacy has put you in a position where you can at least communicate to policymakers, legislators, the DEA, state office. When you explain these things to them, what are they saying to you?
Well, I never really got that far. That's why I say the few people that I've seen that have gotten far enough to get meetings with them, with the policy people, legislative people, they've played that game and constantly phone call after phone call, email after email. I guess the trick is to get to know the staffers, and once you can get them to talk to you, then they'll, you know. And I just sent emails telling my story, sometimes parts of other people's story, and I just get this boilerplate message back. Oh, we're working on the opioid crisis. That's not what I said at all.
Right, right.
And I would just
We've
leave
all been
when
there.
yeah. And I would just call, I just call and say, hi, I'm calling about, I want you to, let you know what's going on with the chronic pain and the other side of the opioid crisis, and the CDC guidelines are being misinterpreted and this misapplication. And, okay, thanks for calling. We'll let them know, and I just, I don't know. And then you see these studies where, laws aren't passed because the majority wants them to pass, and I just got really disheartened and plus, with the I'm losing my meds and having to move and, it's just too much for me to stay as active as I would have liked to be. And at this point, it's really like if I hold my phone for more than 15, 20 minutes in my chair, my arm goes numb. I have carpal tunnel in both hands. I mean, I'm just a wreck. I have a torn rotator cuff in my right shoulder. I mean, I have severe neck issues. I mean, it's just I'm just broken. I'm just broken, and it would take several $1 million and a doctor willing to write more meds than I'm already getting for me to be able to even live for a few more years. And then, then I have to worry about having a heart attack or a stroke and becoming completely incapacitated. Nah, I'm not all about that. I do not want that to happen. And then you're even more of a.
Jessica, this is incredibly powerful stuff. Uh, with the time that we have remaining, because I know we're coming up on the 1 hour mark, and just want to be respectful of everybody's time. If you had the chance to say something to the DEA, the state attorney office in Florida, to the legislators who you try to reach out to, if this is your one opportunity to speak to them so that they can understand you, what would you say to them?
With the DEA, I mean, I understand at the core of it, they're doing what they're being told to do, but need to, they need to back off, We have the data now. It's been almost 20 years that it's not the prescription pain medicines that are behind all of this. It's illicit fentanyl. There's got to be some decent people in that organization that feel badly about this. Speak up, you know. As far as lawmakers and that, they just need to listen to people, Quit being afraid of the opioid term, and it's okay to say that a medication that's been used for 4,000, 5,000 years is okay to still use in, moderation as needed, or, follow the rules. One of the biggest things I remember hearing about this whole situation with the addiction versus dependence is, addiction is when you're using an opioid, for example, and your life goes out of control and you're losing your home and you're not taking care of your kids and you're, Whereas dependence and using long-term opioid therapy, when you use your medication and it's helpful in a helpful dose, your life improves. That's the easiest way to see that. And when people are telling you they're losing their jobs and because they lost their medication, not because they're getting medication, not because they're doing a drug, because they're not doing a drug, there's a problem there. And they need to quit being so afraid, but I doubt it'll ever happen. But according to the CDC, there's 20 million severe pain patients in the country, and you'd think that vote would count for something.
Yeah. What I find is so difficult to understand in all of this is that you would be willing to work with your state legislators, your local physicians, your local policymakers to find a balance between what's adequate pain relief and what would be deemed as sensible oversight. It's not as if you're not willing to work with people that could help you.
Right, right. And I'm not saying opioids are the only thing to help pain. I do believe in a multimodality approach, but then the whole healthcare system becomes an issue then. People that are even have access to physical therapy and that if they're working, then they have to miss work, then they lose that income from missing work. They can lose their job or have problems with their employer because they're losing those hours, so it's not even just affecting their income, it's affecting the employer's income, these 4 visits for people that have, traumatic injuries, these 4 visits a month is ridiculous.
I
If you told
know.
somebody they were going to lose weight and become, swole from going to the gym once a week, for half an hour for a month, you'd laugh. That's not how it
Hmm.
works. The whole healthcare system is broken. It's just completely broken.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous that it costs as much as things do, and I don't know. And there's already 2 more states. I've always been a proponent of right to die laws, always. But when it becomes used as a tool, as an alternative to healthcare, that's not what it was meant to do. That's not how it should be used. And there's already, I believe, I read that there's 2 or 3 more states that are now passing right to die laws, which on the one hand is good, but again, when you're using it as an alternative to a healthcare that would be available if somebody would cover it, it's wrong.
Right.
And again, I want to point out because so many people think that right to die is legal in the U.S. Well, it's illegal in the U.S. if you have you know, a disease that's going to kill you. I can't remember the term right now.
Incurable.
But a terminal illness. If you have a terminal illness and you
Yeah.
only have 6 months or less left to live, that's the only way you can use right to die in the United States. That's it. So people like me that are just in so much pain. I mean, I did certain things today to be able to sit here this length of time and talk to you like this. But I can't do that every day, you know. And so yeah, I sit in my chair all day long. I mean, I don't want people to think I'm sitting here crying every day and I'm just absolutely miserable with my entire life. I love life. I still like to look out the windows and see the squirrels on the wires and see the sun outside but it's really not a life. I can't visit my kids. I can't even stand up and hug my children anymore. So yeah, I'm done. I'm shut up.
What?
Sorry. Get going.
Yeah. Was there anything that was like your final? I mean, something that happened to you, or I mean, was there a point where you just decided this is the direction this is the path I'm going? Or
Yeah,
was there?
I haven't been able to get a decent enough pain relief. I'm on quote unquote high doses right now to some people, which
Right,
is nothing compared to what I used to be on. And my money's running out. I can't afford to live at this point.
right. There's just no resources available for you.
No, no,
Yeah,
no.
I'm so sorry, Jessica, that you're put in
Yes.
this
I
situation.
Yeah, I've come to terms with it pretty much, so I'm not as upset as I was about it when initially,
Yeah,
I went on plenty of rants, but I'm more
right.
upset for the other people. Every time I talk about this, by the way, get DMs from people that say I'm thinking about doing the same thing. I'm, Can you help? Yeah, all the time, every single time. Back when I was on Facebook, every time
Right,
we've had discussions. I've had discussions and support groups with people, kind of keeping it. You had to be careful about what you're saying, but we all
right,
were talking about it. We were calling it our Plan B. I
right.
tried to start a group called the Plan B, but it's hard to have a group talking about even rational suicide on
Yeah,
Facebook.
yeah, you'll get.
Plus, I would feel horrible, absolutely horrible, if I gave somebody the tools to do this and they weren't. I will give people the means to get to the information
Right,
that I found, but I'm not going to just hand it to them. They have to put the work in to find it because I would just feel absolutely horrible if somebody that actually could move ahead and it's just they're just having a bad day or whatever, they haven't really thought this through, you know took their own life, and when there was still hope for them in the future, and it's not up to me to decide that all the time either, but I would just feel horrible
could
having
could,
that responsibility on myself.
could you tell us a little bit about the procedure itself? I'm very
Yeah, I'm
curious.
going to be using nitrogen gas. You make a hood out of a turkey roasting bag. I probably shouldn't go into too much detail, but it's out there, the Peaceful Pill Handbook. You can
Okay.
buy that. They have an ebook through Exit International. You can join them. You can buy the book, or you can join them for a nominal fee, and then you get access. They have snippets, they're called, where they go through each. They give all the different ways to do this. They try to find the happy hypoxia, they call it, and they have like the three best ways to do it. They're the least violent, the least painful, and the quickest. And there's another group, the group that I'm using in the U.S. They're Exit International. What was the other one? I can't remember the other one right now. But yeah, they have a lot of information. There's another book. Derek Humphreys wrote a book that started a lot of this, and I can't remember the name of it right now. I'm terrible for this, but yeah, I could give that information. But yeah, I was shocked. I wasn't really when I was, but it was surprising how often I'm contacted every time I say something. Almost every time I get a message asking me, interested in it, and a lot of things people don't realize is that people that do this a lot of times, even with the American way, people just want to know they have that option. They may not even use it. They just want to know they have that option. It makes them feel safer and get more control, and so. But yeah, it's just heartbreaking to see, especially like in Canada. You see the letters afterwards and the obits from these people. They're saying the only reason I did those was because I couldn't get pain medication. Because that's not what these things should be used for.
Are they'll you mentioned that there'll be somebody with you uh, throughout the whole process.
Yeah, I don't think I want to go into that too
Okay,
much.
okay. Sorry,
Just
sorry.
to
Yeah,
be, it's not illegal in the United States. It's not illegal to
right,
watch someone die by suicide, but you cannot help them in any way. And the courts have gotten a little more lenient than they have been in the past, apparently. But there's a
right. I
lot of people
understand.
out there that just are not going to understand.
Yeah, I
And I don't
understand
want
that.
anybody getting in trouble, and I don't want
Right,
to, don't want to be
right.
stopped.
Yeah, um,
No, I understand.
yeah.
So why don't we do this then? On this note, I think it may be a good time, Jessica, to we could put a pause on the conversation, not stop it, but put a pause on the conversation, and let's find ways that we can get the help that you deserve, so that you have more options than the ones that you were describing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to, anything I haven't tried or, even new information. I'm always open to that. That's why I did this. I'm not planning on changing my plans, but I feel like I at least need to try one more time this way. I want to raise awareness, of course, but I also, obviously, like I said, I don't want to do this, but I just don't really see any other option at this point. I really don't. And I appreciate you
Well,
letting me
let's
tell
see
my
what we can
story.
do.
Thank you.
All right.
No, of course, and it's not over. So let's see what we can do, and hopefully by raising awareness on this, we can reach out to local media, local legislators, and get the help that you need, because it's important that you have some sense of control in your life, and not in the ways that you feel is the only way to get control.
Yeah.
And so, with that, Jessica, thank you so much for sharing your story. I really, really appreciate it. And this is not the end, this is only the beginning. We're going to continue to work together.